Now we'd like to go into topics number 2. Collaboration necessary for disseminating and implementing R&D results for infectious disease control in Africa. So I'd like to introduce a member of the panel, so please turn on your video, those who are participating in this panel. So the moderator is from SATREPS PO, Professor Kiyoshi Kita will be moderating this session. So upon the start of the panel, I would like to just introduce Professor Kita. And after completing the doctoral course at the Graduate School of Pharmaceutical Science at the University of Tokyo, he worked as an assistant at the Faculty of Science at the University of Tokyo, assistant of JETRO University School of Medicine, lecturer, and then as assistant professor at the Institute of Medical Science, the University of Tokyo, and a professor of Graduate School of Medicine. He is currently a professor and director of Graduate School of Tropical Medicine and Global Health at Nagasaki University, and he's also a startup program officer at the Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development. He also is therefore has made a various achievement in this field. In the pathogen metabolism and drug discovery targeting pathogens, he has awarded various accolades. So Duke of Edinburgh Prize of the Japan Academy, and selected as one of the 100 Asian scientists. So with that, Professor Kita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I am Kita. I'm now at the Nagasaki University. We would like to begin a panel discussion with the topic number 2. And I would like to suggest that we hear from the 5 members of the panel first. But before I invite them to speak, I would like to introduce the members of the panel first. The first round of comments I would like to invite in this order. The first person represents the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is Dr. Mihoko KASHIWAKURA. And from JHIT, WHO, Dr. Kazunobu KOJIMA. And from Mitsubishi UFJ Research Consulting Social Impact Partnership head, this is Mr. Michikazu KOSHIBA. And from Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO, and Mr. Joji SATO heads the African Region Strategy Office. And we are inviting Dr. Ikuo TAKIZAWA from JICA once again, who spoke earlier. So in that order, I would like to invite the people to give their initial round of comments. Ms. KASHIWAKURA first, please. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is KASHIWAKURA, and I belong to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I would like to thank Noma at AMED and others for giving me this opportunity. The way of marketing, as well as how that can be reflected in the policies in those countries after different research projects are concluded. We follow the Bill Gates Foundation thinking every form of life is equal, especially those people in Africa and Asia who have difficulty accessing. We try to support. In global health area, a third of the budget goes there. And there are basically 3 things that can be considered as a foundation. Number 1, we should focus on R&D, focusing on impact. In other words, impact-oriented R&D projects is very important to identify most effective project. One foundation working together with AMED and other projects, and for outcomes coming from those research projects, is what we try to deliver globally. One example is Dr. Yoshizawa's group from Nagasaki. In Vietnam, pneumococcal vaccination project has been approved, and from 2009 and 13, we have provided a billion yen, 1.9 billion yen, and from 2006 already for that we have worked. We knew that there has been ongoing projects done by you, so you preceded our activities. Of course, we were able to go after to follow. The pneumococcal vaccination is very expensive, and in order to make sure that the prices come down to affordable levels in many developing countries where this is very needed, we believe that this kind of approach is needed. So many research institutes as well as government funding, we believe is very important so that we can expedite that approach. Number two, the Japanese businesses in the field of a global alliance partnership as well as their products working together with international organization must be done more, and we want to solicit more Japanese businesses to participate. At the Gates Foundation, there are a number of initiatives that we support, and for Japanese businesses to work together in those kinds of initiatives and the international organization, I think we need more presence of Japanese companies in those activities. I'm sure that Dr. Koshiba is more knowledgeable about this than myself, but focusing on the private sector activities of Japan, when we look at the public procurement, it's only 0.7%, very, very low among G7 countries. And so Mr. Koshiba and Japanese government, the counterparts that we discussed this, so that there are things that governments should do, and that can be best done by private sector, but something that individual businesses cannot do should be addressed. We are talking to government officials also to solicit participation of Japanese government, Japanese businesses in global platforms. Third is global health field itself should be part of Japanese policy in ODA in post-COVID area. The Japanese ODA policy in the field of healthcare should be emphasized more in the government policy. It just so happens that in April, seeing COVID-19 situation, many business leaders have said that global health is an important international collaboration field. So many business leaders. So we had together with 14 business leaders, went to see Prime Minister Suga to petition and suggested that the investment volume to be expanded. The Gates Foundation feels that we should tap strength of every industry, every segment in cooperation and globalization, a global societal challenges needs that kind of cooperation at individual business level. So we focus on impact, and we think that strength of every sector be tapped in putting together strategy. What the Kenshibusawa is saying, made well in Japan approach. Japan being members of global team and to be able to make full contribution could have, say, joint ventures approach to partner with members of other countries. creating powerful global team with Japan being part of could be an approach. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So very clear 3 points had been summarized, and it's clear message that was delivered to us. Thank you. And followingly, from WHO, Dr. Kojima, please. Well, first of all, one caveat is that working at Geneva, at headquarters of WHO, but not necessarily. I'm not the best person to participate in this discussion. So biosafety, biosecurity, I'm in charge of this field. And probably this time, all the researchers that join on this symposium, I think we're all related. So evident or risk-based biosafety, biosecurity is what we are advocating from WHO. And this time, the presentation that was provided, and I don't know I'm the best person, optimal person to make and sharing my insight, but there are several things. One that we're thinking is research life cycle. Probably in research, there are cyclic circulation. So what needs to be done is needs assessment to start off with. If it's Africa, what kind of needs are there? What kind of diseases, and specifically then to these needs, what kind of research is needed. And then the next is planning, and the actual research and study is going to be conducted based on that. And furthermore, stakeholder engagement. What kind of stakeholder are you going to engage yourselves? Are you going to influence the stakeholders? And the result of that, what all of you have been discussing is the marketing or policy formulation. So this is, I think, the cycle. And furthermore, it goes into the next cycle, in other words. So that is my understanding of the flow of the research life cycle and the theme that was provided this time. And in 5 minutes, having a high-handed, so to speak, presumptuous to speak to the expert. But what's in red, needs assessment or stakeholder engagement, the engagement influencing the stakeholders. This should be previously planned or some kind of study before the actual research. This has to be established firmly, and as a result of that, it leads to a wonderful result of the research. So I feel very presumptuously, this is my understanding of the flow. So before the actual research, why is it so such research is needed? And why are we going to conduct this research and study? And the result of that, what kind of people are we going to influence? And how are we going to disseminate the information of the result? This has to be thought through in order to start the research for Africa and also for the other region as well. So I think this is the ideal approach. And also the stakeholder engagement. What kind of players? Again, it's WHO-centric in a way, I'm sorry to say, but my, of course, office, WHO headquarters, global, and the regional, and sub-regional, and national. So these are the players that respectively in their fields are responsible for certain work. WHO is a large organization, and Geneva, we have a headquarters, or CDC, it's at the headquarters in Atlanta. And the regional level, WHO, I'm sorry to talk about only at WHO, but we have Africa Regional Office. And also, the regional player, we have Africa in case, African Union, and recently Africa CDC is the implementation arm of African Union. So this, of course, presence is very strong. And sub-regional players, again, we cannot ignore the importance of them. In other words, one example, this is the West African Health Organization, WAHO. So these, of course, are presence of institution, and furthermore, each of the national government have a state ministry for health. And this research life cycle, which I have alluded to earlier, what kind of player what kind of effort is going to be extended? Myself, I do not have a answer for this, but I think this is something that respectively all of you are considering as what would be the best means. WHO from Geneva, if you're working in this organization, or reagent, or the characteristic and property of the drugs, it could be something that's much closer from the African region. It's better to work with the WHO of African region, or maybe directly with the Ministry of Health of one's own nation. So there are various cases, and it's all different by case. And for instance, several speakers have already mentioned, we have pre-qualification scheme in WHO. My understanding is that WHO, the other UN organizations, the drug procurement or in vitro or diagnostic, when they are procuring this, the pre-qualification has to be provided, and this is the required condition and prerequisite. And we have a COVID vaccine that we have been talking about, but not only drugs and medicines, but already have been talked about extensively. In vitro diagnostic reagent also needs to be pre-qualified. And furthermore, inspection service also are provided by WHO as well. So for this, the details, please access this site at this web page. You'll be able to know more about this. And last slide for me is a very short presentation. Brûlé ulcer. The brûlé ulcer resides within Africa. A few years ago, this disease at a small island country had the outbreak of this brûlé ulcer, but it was difficult to diagnose. So what can we do? And there were a lot of inquiry to my office as well. And at that time, the samples had to be sent to advanced European nation, and that was one idea. But the samples, sending the sample itself, it was difficult. But in terms of discussion today, I've conducted my own research. In research, there are wonderful research results that are conducted with Côte d'Ivoire, and I've come to know that. But unfortunately, these diagnostic kit is effectively utilized in these community, unfortunately, have not been evident. So I have recalled that fact. This picture is WHO library. Brûlé ulcer. If you go through the search of this world of brûlé ulcer, I did not know this, but WHO collaborating center is in Australia, and this at the time in the center. This is the WHO Collaborating Center, the certificate that has been provided, and these kind of joint effort are being provided. And of course, the maximum, utilization of this effort, I don't know how that will be. And it was used as he was the head of the West Asian region. So again, I think this is something that is very ideal of having these course results utilized. Various field, various discipline, wonderful researchers already that is close to commercialization of the practice. But unfortunately, it has not been fully used as a potential of the solution set. It is such a pity. So if this talk would give you a backdrop of how we would be able to promote that, I would be very happy. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the most important thing is the player represented, and Dr. Suzuki has talked about the brûlé ulcer. Wonderful seeds existed, and the big problem is how to bring that to the field where it's most needed and have people actually make use of this. I would like to invite KOSHIBA-san from Mitsubishi UFJ Research. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Can you put up the English language presentation material I have supplied to you ahead of time, and then come back to several shots of us the web page. Can I go back to that? Some are in Japanese, but is that okay? Yes, I think that would be fine. Thank you. Let me begin with my first presentation slide. It says pictures I at the bottom, where our service, this is our service that we provide, will become key in my talk, so I hope you will Google this later. What we're doing is, together with UN agencies and global funds, MICRC, and also Physicians Without Borders, these larger groups, when they procure products, we want to make sure that the Japanese companies and their products will become part of the candidates, and we are trying to make sure that's the case. I will be focusing on our business as that kind of business, but I have been able to listen to different perspectives. It has been very, very helpful. But at the second line is what we what I'm talking about, UN procurements, including the related agencies, how Japanese companies can participate, and we definitely lack services to support them. Some companies are providing some support for some of the areas, but it's not for every industry. And related to that, this here we're talking about TTPP, but in R&D activities, the people working in Europe are working in regulatory harmonization from Europe, and local regulators and diagnostic equipment manufacturers in North America are heavily participating. Essential diagnostic list several years ago was adopted by WHO, like UEL, but we know that manufacturers and developers and researchers in Europe and North America had been sharing information, exchanging thoughts, and that preceded that kind of introduction. I would like to talk about that. UN procurement, something like 2 trillion yen worth of procurement is done each year. Half is related to consulting and other services. The remaining half is actually goods procurement. And naturally, we have drugs, including contraceptives and vaccines at the top. And inclusive of TTP, medical devices, of course, are always at the very top of the list. The numbers shown here, some come through like Gavi and other global funds, but not always. Some do not include that. This is for your reference. Pharmaceuticals, medical equipment and devices, what are being procured by UN organization, and related to that, lab kits. UN organizations sometimes procure these that are used in laboratories, not directly under UN agencies. Now, I have prepared a lengthy and voluminous brochure in Japanese, but have already been provided to AMED Secretariat for you to see if you're interested. And since I have time, this is the annual report in Japanese of what we are doing about the Global Fund. Something like $790 million worth of procurement, and this is for 2019, but this is about the amount. About 16% of the fund is for rapid testing kits. So this is something that you should pay attention to as businesses. TPP, many people know what this is. This is UNICEF and WHO for Zika vaccine and Zika diagnostic tests are being procured as TPP. So these are the types of products that will become necessary, is what they are doing. And this is called for work together. And so it's important to pay attention to that. I mentioned that how faculty members of universities working in Europe putting together and exchanging views to establish requirements. Salam. I'm not sure that the Americans know this. This is one of the largest laboratory equipment group in the area of IBG. Rosanna Feelings is the name of the professor, and she is there, and regulatory harmonization activities. So my impression is that they're making sure that these two are working together, and I have participated in several of them, and they are very active in events that happens in Annecy and Geneva. There is in the resort areas we have CDC heads from Nigeria, for instance, and some Japanese manufacturers are sometimes participating, but WHO media heads are there, and they are in this kind of a retreat for about a full week going over this. That leads to PDQ and research projects. And I believe that we should be aware that these kind of activities preceding a prerequisite announcement is important. Center on Global Health Architecture. I am in charge of this within my company, although it was not listed in my title introduced. Dr. Rosanna Feelings, as some of you may know, is an advisory board member. So this is Professor Rosanna Peeling. MELC Global Health are the Google search terms that you should use, and you can find more about this. The grassroots type of activities and harmonization in the United States include this too. Pan-African Harmonization Working Party, I think that some 13 countries are participating, the so-called regulators are joining, who on their own do not have a regulatory approval process established in the country. And this has been summarized, their activities have been summarized here too. And picture I hope you will go to this page to find out more of this. Some manufacturer representatives have already mentioned this today, and I would like to finish here. When you introduce your products there, it probably is easier when the country has WHO. So we have these 13485, for example. When all of that is prepared, it's easier, but there are regions and markets without those certification or qualifications. If you already have been certified, now for UN procurement, some European players have been doing business with them for more than 4 decades, and in many cases they have relationships already established with national regulators. It's very difficult to ascertain who is best. We have business relationship with West African countries and East African countries, and so there are companies that do this. So work together with local distributors is the theory. Local distributors, powerful, may not necessarily be members of certifying groups. So I think Japanese businesses should think about partnering up with the European groups for best approach. I have said many things. The time is quite limited, but I would like to thank the chair for giving me this chance to talk. Thank you.
So thank you. I think it's important to highlight what is significant. So it's okay to exceed the time. That's not a problem. So thank you very much for highlighting a very important point. And towards the latter part of the discussion, I would like to invite your avid participation. Now I would like to invite from JETRO, Mr. Joji Sato, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. I am working at the JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization. I'm in charge of Africa. My name is Sato. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very honorable joint symposium. And I was very much interested because working with Africa, since joining in JETRO, I have been all the way through, was involved with Africa and infectious diseases. Working in Africa, always you have to be mindful about the infectious disease while you work, and a very specific actions that has been undertaken by the researchers and the public sectors, learning in detail. It really is a learning experience for me. So the panel 1 discussion, I was very much intrigued by the conversation that has been exchanged. In JETRO, my team, it's the first time, and of course many of you may have heard the name JETRO, but you may not know what we do. So very briefly, I'd like to introduce JETRO and also come back to the point that has been highlighted today. So JETRO is under the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. It's an independent entity, as the name represents. It's a Japan entity's overseas business in promoting investment and trade is the area of our responsibility. And with reflect of the needs of the time, of course, the responsibility is subject to change. But we are inviting overseas companies to Japan in terms of startup in Japan. The overseas development is supported by us, and we are welcoming overseas investment to Japan as well, and innovation, and also promoting Japanese food to overseas. And SMEs in Japan, they need to be promoted to go outside, offshore of Japan. We support that. And we also have research and study contributing back to the private sector. So that is our responsibility as JETRO. And our strength of an organization, without doubt, is that we have wide range of network inside and outside Japan. So 55 countries, there are 76 offices and presence, and inside Japan, Tokyo and Osaka. On top of that, we have 48 locations and presence and offices in Japan. So all the prefectures in Japan, we have our presence. And each of the location and presence, each of the regions enterprises, we are deeply related with the regional local entity, and our responsibility to connect these 48 locations in Japan. We have offices, and with the overseas 76 offices outside of Japan, we need to link them together and promoting overseas business. So that is our responsibility. And Africa, well, South Africa, Mozambique, Kenya, Ethiopia, Egypt, Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Nigeria. These 9 countries, we have an office. And originally, we only had 4, but recently we have increased the number of offices to 9 offices. And this is due to the fact of TCAD. Focusing on TCAD is gradually changing, and TCAD at the time of the inception, it was support, 100% related to support, but now it's turned into business as we have multiple conferences, and Africa was asking us to do this and that, and there was a lot of requests from Africa. But recently, gradually, it's a business partner, fair business partner on par. So that, I think, is how we are working on. Well, Africa is not the only area changing, but the Japanese enterprise interest towards Africa is also increasing. So we function as a bridge of our business between Japan and Africa. So we have high expectation on the outcome of that. So that's what we do. And last year, due to COVID, we have to restrain ourselves in activity, but if only with Africa, I mean, there are 20 or so seminars and 4,000 people plus have participated. So the global market, we offer information, but Africa, in terms of the attraction of the event, is outstanding next to Asia, I must say. So very, very popular. So with that being said, so though there's a lot of Japanese enterprises having their operation in Africa now. So the local sort of trade fair, we have booth introducing Japanese technology and goods. But vice versa, it's online. We have a business dialogue. So by Zoom, African company wanting to buy Japanese product, and there are Japanese companies want to sell product to Africa. There is an online business meeting, and we had 4, and one of them was related to medical devices. And Japanese enterprise, about 30 companies also have joined together online. It was a very active discussion that we were able to engage with Africa. So with Denka Corporation and Canon and Japanese companies, regarding the African infectious disease control, we have a firm belief that our technologies and science could be utilized, and therefore a tremendous amount of interest. And how this is going to be connected together in making a viable, lucrative business, and how we be able to contribute to the reduction of the infectious diseases is the important point. And Africa, having said that, because I have been focusing on Africa all through these years, HIVs, when I was in South Africa, the HIV AIDS, in the factory, Japanese factory, the expert workers have lost their lives one after the other. So despite that outbreak, we have seen a recovery because the price of drugs has gone down, and because of the educational, of course, dissemination, due to these prudent effort, we believe that you have seen a recovery. Malaria, I think about 800,000 people have lost their life, but because of the nets that you can have around your beds and allow your living environments, you can avoid the vectors. So this effort is not wasted, and the African business, this is causing really a drive and momentum. So the correlation of that is very important. But having heard the discussion so far, the international cooperation and the procurement, the actual sustainable business, the private sustainable business, the difficulty to put that in commercial viability seems to be very difficult. So I myself, the Japanese medical device manufacturers want to sell devices to Africa. My recommendation is to be listed in the United Nations official procurement list. But to do so, you need local network. The local maintenances are required, and people development for that is necessary. So that always comes as a package. So the local partner, you need to find a good partner locally to get yourself registered. So that is an important criteria. So in order to support that area of endeavorment is our role. So as I've said, online business negotiation, there's a very robust African partner will be found, and leveraging that partner, we would like to try to be listed in the United Nations procurement list. So from MUFG research, Mr. KOSHIBA mentioned, I completely agree with what has been said. So again, leading that to business. Then, even after delisted from the UN procurement list, the local distributors will be able to help and continue on with a business. So that, I think, is a necessary perspective. So various, of course, approval system, correct accreditation process. We are mostly dealing with medical devices, but in Japanese language. On homepage, we have information, and I hope that this will be of some reference to you. So business negotiation, if you're interested, please do send us an inquiry. So that will be all for my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that included the introduction of JETRO's activities, and he has also talked about what needs to be done, as well as what the individual businesses can look to if they want to expand their business in African countries. From JICA, please. Yes, I spent much time at the very beginning in my talk discussing, so let me focus my comments to just two. One is about the ownership, how we can align our activities to our African counterparts who own, because we know that there are wonderful groups, excellent and talented scientists, and very good viable businesses in Africa. So it's very important for us to be more flexible and make sure that we provide something that's in line with their needs. And secondly, global partnership is important. And today we have heard how Japanese academic representatives have been working together with businesses and them forming networks. This is a wonderful approach, and so individuals should think about going over the silos. Everybody should try so that we can lead to bigger impact. So I hope that that kind of all-encompassing partnership should be focused. Thank you. Now, I would like to do this. We have heard from 5 members of the panel, and we have received the questions from the audience. But before that, before I take that, I would like to see if there are questions or comments from among the panel to each other, or if they feel that they have not said what they needed to say and that they want to add. I would like to take that first. So I would like to invite the members of the panel to discuss among themselves. If not, we have ample time left for discussions, so we can come back to that. I personally have some questions, but I am chair, so I have to exercise my restraint and make sure that I give priority to others. From a person by the name of Yoshioka from Nagasaki University is asking, this is about how you can best support commercialization of research outcomes. I believe that this kind of open dialogue like the one we are having today is important. Can you suggest fora that exist? This is what wonderful opportunity, so I would like to invite the members of the panel about their thoughts and what already exists. It can be in the order of the first round of comments then. For that question, I would like to invite Ms. KASHIWAKURA first. Open dialogue, and you're asking about the fora for doing that. This is an excellent question, and I was thinking about what fora exists. Seminars like this, meetings like this should be maintained, focused on dialogues to commercialize research outcomes. And in case of our foundation, we try to bring together private and public research institute and government. We tried to look at what individual sectors can do best and what each player can do best, and bring those strengths together. And so a mechanism to create a multi-sectoral group. And so, as I tried to say, it should be participated by Japan. It doesn't have to be all Japan. The Japanese members should be part of global team for different industries, global sectors. The discussion should be made at global levels to know which part Japan wants to become, so that the strength held by the parts can be leveraged and tapped into, so that we have the strongest global group. Thank you very much for that comment. You talked about support with emphasis on impact. So where it's important and where you can help most should be identified, right? Next, I would like to invite Kojima-san to discuss on this same question. Yes. How can we continue open dialogue, or what kind of fora can be maintained? It has to be fruitful, meaning it has to be actionable and impactful. In other words, it's not the places where you go and listen to lofty lectures and go home and do nothing. I know you have wide experience as WHO. Well, this kind of seminar and the symposia being continued is one, but as was mentioned by Dr. Kita, being there, listened, and do nothing will not lead to wonderful outcome, like what Dr. Kita said. I agree with that. And listening to others speak, I felt that I would expect know-hows about who to act on, how and when could lead to most expedited approval of products, or would let you into the markets that can be helped most, or how that would lead to best use by local people. That is where we see gaps. I was talking about how can we best commercialize R&D outcome. I mean, that should be decided upon even before you begin your first lab work. This is what I said. So those should be pre-specified. So JICA and consulting firms, JETRO, most likely have a wealth of knowledge. And if they can share that and with others and have a system to be able to share the widely. And of course, approaches may differ depending upon what product or what services you're talking about, but generalized framework of how you can best lead to product approval is probably known, and individual companies, individual academic institutions may have difficulty acquiring all the necessary information. So those related agencies and organizations should invest in surveys to compile what's the requisite is needed. Thank you. You did provide in the first round of comments that the pre-specification and thinking through what you want to do with the research outcome is needed. So, after each sportive games and matches, athletes do say that they want to make sure they put into practice what they have learned from the case, and that's the approach you need. KOSHIBA-san, thank you very much. All of this is so interesting. I have three things I want to offer. Number one, we already have communities, including the academia, industry, and government for each of the targeted disease entities, as well as therapeutic approaches. And I'm sure you are members of that. I would like to suggest you work closely together with your counterparts in Europe. That is helpful. And also, we leverage the already established close cooperation between Europe and America. When I say Europe, it's not just Geneva we're talking about. That and in Japan. This is what I would like to see established from the business point of view. A contribution to global health is limited to some companies. We have to acknowledge that it's not every company that can do this, because you require international perspective to contribute, and you have to be willing to work together with African counterparts. That goes beyond what businesses do, looking over existing products. So it would be very nice if, say, government, the cabinet office can lead government, academia, and industry group that, and especially members of the industry who share the same thinking. So what AMED is doing in their SATREPS as well as NTT is doing precisely that. A local researcher network existing in Africa, if that can be shared by broader membership, I mean, that would lead to enhanced value of new businesses who might want to engage. So this is my dream about that. In a perfect world, we will have that kind of network.
Thank you very much. There's one question. It's a question to Dr. Koshiba. Well, thank you very much for valuable information today. In terms of UN procurement, there's some of the issues that we feel on a day-to-day basis. What are the areas that we'll be able to make improvements? So, well, indeed, I think you have already answered this question, so thank you very much for that. So now, from JETRO, would like to invite Sato-san, Mr. Sato. Yes, thank you very much. So, two things that I would like to say. One is that this topic is very, very Japanese in origin, because when I was in London, the basics research to applied research for the commercialization of that result in UK, the similar issues are confronting them as well. They're very strong in basic research, but the final, of course, commercialization, there's no one to help them. So they had that problem. And in order to improve the situation, the cluster program, in terms of the networking, academia, private and public, they have very frequent networking opportunity, and new, of course, idea will come up. There's an issue with patent, so therefore it was not a clear sort of an approach in itself, but those activities were evident with like Nagasaki University, the collecting on the enterprises of public sector around Nagasaki, and have, of course, communication. There will be many players who will be interested. So we also need a similar culture here in Japan as well. So that's one thing. The other is that China and Western countries, if there is a phase to realize or make the research result feasible, it's going to be spun off. So the university who conducted research will go outside the university to conduct a startup. And that, I think, is a global standard, the spin off of that. And Japan also need to engage in a similar thing as well. JETRO, nationwide, the universities nationwide, we're working very closely with concluding a memorandum of understanding, MOU, and that's a venture starting from university and internationalization and establishment of a successful startup. And with that, many universities are also engaged within that idea. So if this does accelerate, I think we will be able to accelerate the speed of commercialization of the research result. That will be all. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, JETRO, in partnership with academia, thinking about that, unfortunately, I have not done my homework, and this is my first time to learn that from you. A lot of C's in universities, but one thing is education and also pursuing for the truth. It's sometimes very difficult to go outside the wall of the university, but if there is a bridge, Japanese people believe in the power of harmonization. It's easy to teamwork. So I hope this would lead to a success. So then, last but not least, Dr. Takizawa, thank you very much. I would like to be very brief. So, what Mr. Koshiba said, I completely agree. So, we already have a lot of platform here in Japan, but again, this forum is one of the important platform. But it seems as though we have not made progress from here onwards. And it's such a waste. A lot of interesting idea, or maybe something that we like to offer, maybe in a smaller group, in an informal way. If we can have a discussion, a culture to do so, if we could create a sort of a flow to do so, I think it would be good. Due to COVID-19, it's a technology starting from Japan, how we be able to contribute to the world. JICA has been thinking about that. So vaccine manufacturers and drug manufacturers, we have had a lot of dialogue with them and discussion with them. But COVID, without the urgency of this pandemic, we need to have a more open or free space for dialogue. That would be the best scenario. Thank you very much. So thank you very much. So as I've said, I had a lot of questions, but I think it's now already time. So since it's a vital opportunity, I mean the SATREPS program for 5 years, and something that is promising is going to be generated, and how that could be led to the implementation phase. Well, today, amongst the speakers, unfortunately, we were unable to invite African speaker, but it's only the partner who has spoken on their behalf. But I hope the African listeners, colleagues, peers who are with us on this web seminar, when we talk about Africa, it's far distance geographically from Japan. So the original colonialized sort of a relationship. So it was still continuation of that, but the Caesarean, in other words. But the project with Zambian universities have been already extending for several years, and accumulation of history. And we are now seeing a startup of new project. So hoping that for the betterment of the world, we have a same goal. So we have a same intent. So we hope that in this type of a communication, since we have a lot of good seeds, good product that we can jointly develop, and we are in the midst of that journey. So we hope that we'll be able to do so, something that is really beneficial for the community. So with that, thank you very much. I would like to conclude the session.